Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portella, and today we're going back to Seoul to cover EXO Kitty Season 2. I love this season. I'm really excited for Season 3 after this. But before we dive into today's episode, let me tell you how you can support and follow the podcast. You can, of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Comment, rate, leave a review. Leave a review. Please leave a review. You can also watch full video breakdowns on YouTube, on Substack, and on Patreon. If you want community and the fan guides, go over to Patreon. If you want more pop cultural analysis, go over to Substack. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at FemmeandFuriousPod. Now, before we dive into our recap, little quickie episode that we have today, I just want to talk about some season-wide themes that I thought were really interesting and very different from last season. So, still a coming-of-age show, for sure. They're in high school. They're only in their second semester of their junior year of high school. So, we're still very much in that high school setting. But there was something about last season that had more themes that tend to be canonically coming of age stories, identity, belonging, etc. This season has a lot of really deep family stuff, and the way that the show is designed or explored, I think it can be overlooked, especially when we're looking at this show from this really specific lens of feminism. And I didn't want to overlook it because number one, Gina was my favorite character last season, and she's not in this season at all. We don't see Yuri's parents at all. We get a lot about Yuri's parents, but we don't see them. And especially for Gina, who had this story arc of her own and who is the principal of KISS, not being a part of this season just felt so off to me. There was something so strange about that. And yet, her character is still pivotal for Yuri's character, for example, because there's a multi-episode arc of Yuri and Gina not speaking, even though she's off screen, but just getting this commentary from Yuri that they're not speaking because essentially, even though Gina was really great about Yuri coming out to her last season, they had that amazing conversation at the end of the season. Yuri basically says, well, immediately after that, she told me not to tell my grandparents, and then she kept adding to the list of people that she didn't want me to tell. And so essentially shoving Yuri back into the closet. And this becomes a plot point, as we'll discuss, with Kitty, Yuri, and Juliana and that sort of love triangle. But this idea of Gina going through this arc and then sort of putting her back into the closet and what it is to be an adult and still growing, I really wish that we would have had Gina on screen to be able to get that, and I'm hoping that we'll get her in season 3 when it comes back in April. But there's also a lot in this season that really dives into these young men in the show and the pressure that they feel to impress their father figures. And we get this in different ways with our main characters. So particularly with Jin this season, and then with Mino. So let's start there. With Jin, we get this download of information that his father was a part of the 87 Olympics. And because of that, he feels this incredible pressure to have athletic excellence with running to sort of carry the mantle that his father has established. And this is so patriarchally damaging. And I think a lot of the times when we're talking about the patriarchy, we talk about the influence that it has on women and on queer folks. But in my coverage of Binding 13, we really have to explore how this idea of patriarchy, particularly around athletic excellence, really influences young men. And it's unfair to have a show about feminism without at least acknowledging, even if it's not always our topic of discussion, how influential the patriarchy is on young men and what they do with that information, how they process it. So by the time we get from the beginning of the season with Jin through the end of his arc, where he is prolonging the faking of his injury because he feels liberated from this pressure that has been placed upon him, I think is really critical as far as a commentary on the patriarchy goes. And then you have Minho, who is literally in the shadow of his brother's success. And we spent a lot of time with Mr. Moon, who is Minho's dad, over the course of the season, where Minho tells us that Juno is his father's firstborn son from outside of the marriage that he had with his mother, and that he is the favorite son. And this is not metaphoric or the way that, like, if you're sitting around the dinner table with your family, you're like, so and so is mom's favorite. His K-pop name is Favorite Son. He comes out at the end of the season and sings a song, Favorite Son. That is so mentally and emotionally damaging for Minho. It has to be. And we see how it influences. He wants this relationship with his father. He feels ignored by him. He feels discarded by him, to the point where when Kitty addresses Stella's behavior, again, all stuff that we'll talk about today, he basically says to Kitty, you don't even care that I'm having a better relationship with my father. And at that point, even if he knew something about Stella was off, I don't think that he would have been able to accept it, because his need to be loved by his father, the literal love of a patriarch, is more important to him at that point than swallowing the very hard pill of the truth, which is something is off about Stella. We also have this with Day, but it's really quite different, because Day seemingly has a good and loving relationship with his father. It is simply that his mother has died and there's been extra pressure placed on their family, especially financially. That pressure and truly their unspoken grief about the loss of the mother weighs, I think, in between the relationship with Day and his father. So I don't see them as having similar relationships to like Jin and Minho have with their fathers. I see it more as like Day's father having a lot of pride and wanting to be able to provide and take care of his children, and also grieve the loss of his wife and still feel this pressure, when his son tries to help, because it's like a knocking of his own pride and what that does for your masculinity, that you grow up in a society, and we're not even talking like specifically about Korean society, just like the structure of the patriarchy, growing up hearing that men have to be providers, men have to offer something provincial for women or for their partners or for their children, and the stigma that comes around that inflates one's pride to the point of not being able to receive help, to the point where he's tired and called out on it, and he continues to work himself to the bone, to the point where he gets into a car accident and makes everything much worse, unintentionally putting this financial pressure on Day to win this talent show, to be able to land a record deal, to pay off his father's medical bills because his father has too much pride to like let Day get a part-time job. So we can't escape this season of television without talking about these relationships between these young men and their fathers. And I actually think out of many of the themes that we see across this season of television, this idea of like young men and how they process and digest the expectations that are put on them that are constructed by the patriarchy feels really prominent. On like a really, really minor note, we also then have Alex, who is trying to develop his relationship with Professor Lee, a story that was so interesting last season and sort of just like shoved off to the side this season. Like, it's there, but we don't really dive too deep into it. And I don't know if that's because there is like a loss of Gina here that doesn't complete the story the way that maybe they wanted to tell it. And I didn't look into any reasons why Gina wasn't a part of the show. I don't know if that actress just wasn't available. I don't know if she didn't want to come back. I don't know if they didn't offer her a contract. I just felt the weight of the loss of her in this season on screen. And I think that really influenced the relationship that we see between Alex and Professor Lee as well. We see this sort of gentler, softer side of Professor Lee, where it's almost a little bit more comical than it was last season. And Professor Lee being like a prime example of the total influence of the patriarchy, where like Gina does not tell this man about her pregnancy because she sees talent and potential in him, and she doesn't want to detract from that talent by essentially strapping this man down with a kid, so to speak, or herself. The fact that she offers to give the baby up for adoption, only for that opportunity to be squandered anyway because Professor Lee decides that music is not pragmatic and practical and talks himself out of it, despite being an incredible musician. So at the end of the season, Stella's fucked up Day's music, and Professor Lee gets to come in and provide his musical talents to the show as a part of Day's performance. And like this small healing that everybody gets to take in the step against the patriarchy. Minho gets this better, more thoughtful relationship with his father. His father, doesn't fear losing his star potential by letting his other son, Junho, come out and tell the world about his own, beginning steps into fatherhood. And we get Jin stepping away from running because it doesn't bring him joy the way that he feels that it should anymore. And we have Day not winning, but also then his father, coming back and saying that because of this class action lawsuit with the Han family, that they're going to be just fine anyway. Meanwhile, not even taking into consideration like the absolute failure that is Yuri's father, not only his employees, that affects Day and his father, but that ends up influencing Yuri by the end of the season, where she's like, so not only am I at my lowest point, but I'm completely broke because her father, hasn't planned well or hasn't run his business well. Just so much around the masculine energy and the influence of the patriarchy over this course of the season. And it just felt really prominent to me and something that I really wanted to touch on before we dive into our recap today. So let us start with our recap. Season 2, episode 1, KISS, Me Again. Welcome back to Kiss Besties. After a Hail Mary orchestrated by Yuri, our Chaos Queen Kitty is back to school in South Korea. Still in the midst of her bi awakening, but desperate to get over her crush on Yuri, Kitty writes a goodbye letter per the advice of her sister Lara Jean, and we all know how spectacularly that went. So what could go wrong? Minho, dejected after Kitty questions his love declaration, acts about as normal as a teenage boy could act, which is to say, pretty fucking weird. After last year's rooming fiasco, Kitty signs up for a single, but finds herself thrust into a room with Juliana and Yuri. Yuri claims that it's fate, but the only thing fated for Kitty is the inability to escape living with somebody that she has romantic entanglements with. Yuri tells the girls that her parents are getting divorced, and personally, as Gina's #1 stan, I have never been happier for that girl. We're also introduced to Stella, the 4th roommate, who has a whole Catholic schoolgirl vibe going on, but not in an ironic way. We're also treated to a mega dose of daddy issues, witnessing in real time the developing relationship between Alex and Professor Lee, but also getting introduced to Minho's dickwad dad, who comes in as a donor, launching a program for the performing arts. Feeling guilty about threatening Minho, Day is confused as fuck at his bestie's behavior after the break and seeks out Kitty to help smooth everything over. Kitty tries to clear the air with Minho, but he taunts her, saying that she liked thinking of him in a romantic context. Not gonna lie, Kitty, who the fuck wouldn't? Kitty neither confirms nor denies, but simply says that neither one of them have the desire to hurt Day, and this seems to land for Minho. Disappointed that she actually made zero progress on learning about her mom last semester, Kitty dives in and asks Professor Lee if he has any information. Following the trail he sets her on, Kitty talks to her Halmoni, asking her about a boy named Simon, to which Halmoni suddenly can't hear her and has to go. Not weird or anything. Stella then admits that she has a crush on Minho and asks Kitty for his number, but all we see is her getting a text from her parents that say she should come home, and just like that, we're roped into the mystery of sketchy Stella. As a little sidebar, this is the second time in the show's history that Minho calls Kitty Cubby. We will see him call her Cubby more and more as the season progresses. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the recap from season 1, and we'll talk about it there. Episode 2, Never Been Kissed. Kitty is experiencing mild self-inflicted torment having to be enmeshed with Juliana and Yuri's flirting. Mino is bored after his date with Stella, but we know what's really happening. That boy is harboring some big ol' feelings for Kitty. In detention, Day admits that he can sing, shocking everybody, and to our great displeasure, we are all introduced to Jin, a toxic alpha male who throws around homophobic rhetoric at our bestie Q. Nobody messes with my bestie Q. Like my Lord and Savior Ariana Grande once said, thank you, next. Cue an awkward audition montage, a trope, if we can call it that, that will always work on me. Meanwhile, Pravina invites Kitty to a queer teen club, and so our Bye Babies lore is deepening. Kitty finds out that she has secret family in Korea, and she has been pressuring Yuri to contact Gina in order to get more information. But Kitty catches Yuri in a lie, and Yuri tells Kitty that she and Gina aren't talking because Gina has been trying to shove her back in the closet since she came out. Q spots Jin at the queer club, and the two have a little hate dance together. When Kitty can't stop looking at Yuri, her date Pravina leaves. Juliana and Kitty have a mini spat about what they think is best for Yuri, and when Kitty leaves, Juliana spits out all of Kitty's pointers to Yuri, which is icky and gross. Stella then stands up for Mino against his dad, and moved by this, Mino kisses her, taking their relationship to the next level. After spending the night together, Jin, who is committed to the enemies to lovers trope, turns off Q's alarm ahead of the track meet. Yuri finds Kitty to tell her that under Juliana's counsel, she called Gina and got her blessing to come out publicly. Ew, Juliana, no one likes a liar. Trying to buy Q time, Kitty runs onto the track and pretends to faint, only for Minho, babe that he is, to come to her rescue. If this reminds you of Lara Jean and Peter, good. While complaining to Q, Kitty accidentally outs Juliana and Yuri to Professor Lee. Episode 3, New Year's Kiss. Juliana continues to be the world's meanest girly pop to our little ball of sunshine Kitty. On one hand, I hate it because Kitty is my close personal friend, but on the other hand, a girl's intuition about someone liking your significant other is never wrong. Mino's dad announces that he'll be hosting a talent competition with all of the students at school. Elisai. This guy is the dude that Carly Simon wrote You're So Vain About. Mino and Q hype Day up and convince him to join. Meanwhile, Juliana tells Yuri that she actually plagiarized Kitty's advice, which we appreciate her coming clean on. Hoping to get more information about her long-lost family, though, Kitty ropes in Pravina and Mino into a B&E in order to open her mom's old time capsule from her years at KISS. Mino invites Kitty home for the holidays. Julia eats it up. What is in this time capsule, you may ask? Eve Song's Heritage Project, directed by Gina Lim, and all that is missing is, whatchamacallit, a VHS? Yuri is late to Juliana's art show in their pursuit of finding a VHS player to watch the video. And Juliana blows up on her because, of course, it was a Kitty-related incident. Eunice flirts with Day while Jin apologizes to Q. With a VHS player officially secured, Kitty visits the past, hearing all about her mother's hopes and dreams, stating that she came to Korea to heal her family and activating the same mission within Kitty. Caught up in the moment, Kitty and Yuri share a kiss, and Mino walks in. Busted. Episode 4, Kiss and Tell. Mino continues to be my favorite fictional boyfriend as he completely puts Kitty at ease by approaching the situation of her and Yuri kissing with curiosity and absolutely zero judgment. That's not me being sassy. He literally just loves Kitty as she is, and I need my girl Kitty to get on board because Minho is endgame. And with that, we are off to a long weekend where things are guaranteed to get a little messy. Love Island has nothing on this episode of television. The holidays are here, and we're serving up daddy issues for the main course. In a bestie confessional, Kitty tells Q that she kissed Yuri right as Jin climbs through the window. Q and Kitty are in a battle royale for the Chaos Crown. The weather comes in as a supporting actress to up the ante on the drama, delivering a blizzard that is forcing everyone to stay inside without Wi-Fi. Juliana and Yuri kiss and make up. Q is ashamed of his fling with Jin. Yuri tells Kitty that their kiss was a big fat mistake, and Eunice finds a mysterious love letter and assumes that it is from Day. Spoiler alert, it's not, but he does ask her out on a date. Overhearing all of this, Madison reads the letter and assumes that Minho wrote it about her. Spoiler alert, Minho did not write the letter. Overhearing that conversation, Yuri reads the letter, grabs Kitty, and confronts her. Guess what? There is a dramatic reading of the love letter going on in the kitchen while these two are having a conversation. And as soon as the word matchmaker pops up, all heads turn to Kitty. Juliana figures out that something happened between Yuri and Kitty, and she questions why Kitty would even bring the letter away with them in the first place, which Kitty proclaims emphatically that she did not. Pravina stands up for herself, as she should, because while we stand behind Kitty unapologetically, we like Pravina, because she's a baddie. Mino seeks out a very dejected Kitty in the hot tub, proving once and for all that if he wanted to, he would, getting into the hot tub fully clothed, ruining his designer clothing, all just to comfort her. And once again, I say, Lara Jean and Peter, anybody? Stella oversees this and, of course, storms away. Jin admits that Stella was snooping before finding him in the armoire. And Detective Kitty takes the bait, starting to dig into Stella's stuff and figure out what the fuck is going on with her weird-ass roommate, only to discover that Stella was the one to bring her love letter and stir the fucking pot. Mino explains his past feelings for Kitty, but Day walks in, and now we have all officially imploded. Episode 5, Kissing Cousins. Kitty is highly suspicious of Stella, operating on even higher alert and in full snoop mode. No one is talking to Kitty, and Day is freezing out Mino. Hopeful to reconcile with Day, Mino offers Kitty a ride to go find her long-lost Korean family in exchange for her talking to Day on his behalf. When Mino and Kitty roll up to her ancestral home, she discovers her great-aunt is a freaking matchmaker. Bestie Q comes in for damage control, trying to talk to Juliana on Kitty's behalf, when all of a sudden Stella walks out of an internet cafe, and both Q and Juliana think it's weird as fuck, and Juliana actually backs up Kitty's theory that Stella was the one who stole her letter. Kitty's not-so-covert plan blows up in her face, no surprises there. Confused, upset, and feeling disconnected from her mom, Kitty cries in the rain. Again, the weather coming in as a real diva this season. Mino, of course, comes in to comfort her in one of my favorite parts of the season, and I sit on my couch as a jealous voyeur. In a shocking turn of events, damaging documents about Mino's dad are leaked to the press, causing a flurry across the KISS campus. Dave finds Kitty and Mino as they return to campus and tells them that he needs a lift to the hospital after finding out that his dad was in a terrible car accident. Episode 6, Kiss and Make Up. Yuri attempts to smooth things over with Kitty, and our girl Kitty is not having it. Plus, she's spending a lot of mental currency wondering if Stella is the cause of all of the moon leaks. But everything else can wait because Peter freaking Kavinsky is here, and we are detouring life for a little bit to hang out with our future brother-in-law. And he comes bearing gifts, specifically letters from Kitty's mom to Simon, the long-lost cousin that originally brought Eve to Kiss in the first place. While shopping for a gift for Lara Jean, Mino shows up, and Peter, another great fictional boyfriend, tells us all the reasons that we should consider Mino to be the love of our lives. Case in point, he calls her Covey, and the drama keeps on coming with a pregnancy scandal, or should we say a scandal by association, since it's Mino's half-brother, who we've never met, who happens to be Mino's dad's star talent that knocked up one of his backup dancers. Yuri makes a plea to Jiwon on Kitty's behalf, trying to reconcile their friendship. Mino, my absolute BB, offers to pay for Day's dad's medical bills. Detective Kitty finds it weird as fuck that Stella has a meltdown at karaoke. Who hates karaoke that much? And she does some digging and praise Jesus for the internet because we finally have some answers. Stella, aka Esther, is a former contestant of one of the Moon contestant shows. And when Mino's dad rejected her, her response went viral on the internet. Kitty spills the tea to Mino, who lays into her. My heart, it hurts. I can't stand when Mino and Kitty are not on good terms. Feeling lower than low, Kitty gets some encouragement from her phobic bro, Peter, who tells her that meddling is her superpower. Her gut reaction is her superpower. Her instincts are her superpower. He says that her meddling landed him the love of his life. Very true, PK. Very true. Meanwhile, Stella takes crazy to a brand new level, installing spyware into the gift that she has Minho give to Mr. Moon, then able to overhear a conversation that he has with Mino about this pregnancy. This chick is giving Harriet the Spy a run for her freaking money. Episode 7, Kiss of Death. It is every girl's wet dream to have a hot boy tell them that they're right, right? At least that's what Kitty's smutty little mind is cooking up about Mino. But onwards and upwards, Kitty must go and start bridging the family gap with Jiwon. Despite their fight, Mino shows up for Kitty when she meets her family again. The truth comes out, and Kitty is one step closer to reuniting her family for good. But on her way back to Kiss, she spots Stella going into the internet cafe again. When she confronts her, Stella says she's logging into her youth church group, sowing seeds of doubt in Kitty. Of course, the second that Kitty leaves, Stella exits the church group and pulls up the software where she's listening in on another conversation between Mino and Mr. Moon. Kitty's feelings for Mino literally blossom as he steps in front of a piece of digital art with blooming cherry blossoms behind him. Is it a little nail on the head? Sure. Do we love it? Absolutely. Mino invites her to dance, and the two share a sweet moment as Kitty apologizes, all right before Stella walks in, digital art changing into flames of fire. Is it that she's too hot to handle? The devil? A witch about to be crucified? D? All of the above? Who's to say? Sporting a brand new look, Minho puts the pieces together, concluding that our girl Kitty was right. Of course she was. But Stella proceeds to be a bad bitch, sporting power moves that only a woman could concoct. And honestly, I'd be a little impressed if it wasn't getting in the way of Mino and Kitty. Stella tells Mino that she knows about the pregnancy, and she has set up Kitty to take the fall for moon leaks if Mino does anything to try and get out of this arrangement that they have. Our knight in bespoke armor won't let anything happen to Kitty, and allows himself to be blackmailed into this fake relationship. Kitty admits to herself that she has feelings with a capital F for Minho, repeating his words from last season. She's fallen a little bit, or maybe a lot. Episode 8, Sealed with a Kiss. Kitty's time at Kiss is coming to a close as her scholarship is ending. Kitty and Jiwon FaceTime Margot, and I forever ship the sisterhood of the song Covey Girls. When Mino passes over his collagen water for an energy drink, Q&A gets suspicious about his relationship with Stella. Kitty corners Mino at the performance and forces a confession out of him. Like, Minho baby, blink twice if you're okay. Enter from stage left, Juno, who admits that he is in love with the backup dancer that he got pregnant. Kitty uses this to devise a plan, have Juno make a PSA of his PDA. Stella is actively sabotaging everyone's performances, from passing out drinks that she has infused with what? We don't know, but all of the dancers are getting sick. She's causing wardrobe malfunction. She's messing with lighting and cues. But Kitty, Minho, and Yuri are going to do whatever they can to make sure that Day's performance goes perfectly. Acting as his backup dancers, Day and his friends put on an amazing performance, giving Day a real chance at winning the competition. Juno brings his girl out on stage and announces to the world that he is going to be a father, and then proposes to her on stage in front of the world, blowing up Stella's blackmail material. Juliana and Pravina are the new couple of the year, devastating Yuri. And at her lowest, Yuri discovers that there is a class action lawsuit against her father, freezing all of her assets. Margot, Kitty, and their Halmoni arrive to Jiwon's house for the reunion, bringing the two sisters together at last. After an uptick of donors from the school's performance, Kitty is able to renew her scholarship, effectively coming back to Kiss for her senior year. Seeking out Mino to tell him this news, she finds him still reeling from Stella, swearing off dating for good. Ready to bide her time and wait, she holds back from telling him how she feels. That only lasts a hot minute before she decides to ask him to spend the summer together. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to enter our endgame era, and that is Kitty's season 2. EXO Kitty season 3 is coming back April 2nd, so we'll be doing an episode somewhere next month on that season as well. All right, let's crack open the burn book where we look at the superlatives for this episode. The Bold and Bothered Award. This award is strictly for the femme and the furious. It is the quote or the moment that really relays the feminine rage. And it is Kitty talking to Mino, where she says, "I'm not afraid of some freak dressed in sheep's clothing. If she wants to mess with my friends, I will drop kick that bitch faster than she can say, 'Have a blessed day.'" It's such a great line. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring or the moment that is the most empowering. And for Margot, and for me, it was Margot and Kitty reuniting their grandmother with her sister. Seriously, I sobbed so hard. I loved this storyline so much, and I love that we got to see Margot. The Femme Fatale Award, for the most Smash the Patriarchy moment of the episode. We may not like her, but no one is smashing the patriarchy quite like Stella. Take your pick. Is it the moon leaks? Is it blackmail? Her entire arc hinges on a singular mission of taking down an awful patriarch and a fine example of the patriarchy itself. So while we don't like her, and while we end up liking Mr. Moon by the end of the season, she's got one mission, and it is to take down the patriarchy. And in true, like, canonical femme fatale, the archetype of a femme fatale, somebody who uses their sexuality to bring down the patriarchy, she uses her ability to rope Mino into a relationship romantically as leverage in part of her plot for taking it down. So she, like, truly wins this award, like, on all fronts. Speak Your Truth trophy, the best line or quote. Okay, there's two. Number one is from Mino, where he's talking to Day and he's like, is that a cheeky little smile I see? I just love that line. And then the second one is from Peter Kavinsky, and he says, our Kitty's song freaking Covey. Don't you forget it. Love that line. We love our brother-in-law, Peter Kavinsky. And then honorary heartthrob, because I'm just a girl, okay? And I want to talk about the most wound-worthy moments. And this, to me, is when Kitty is out in the rain and she's crying and she's so upset and she's looking on at the graveyard of her ancestors past, and she's just like, I thought that I would get, like, some really good qualities from my mom, and I got nothing. I'm all of the worst things that she is. And he just pulls her in and he comforts her. Everything that Mino does this season, with the exception of their fight, is so supportive of Kitty. She's bi and has feelings for Yuri and is a part of a cheating scandal. He doesn't judge her. She wants to go seek her family out. He's there to help her with the Korean. She's got this one opportunity to have her sister and her halmoni fly out and be a part of this reunion, and their flight is canceled. He uses their private jet, their family's private jet, to fly her family out. Like, Mino is so supportive of Kitty and sees so much in her and loves her truly for who she is, for all of the complex pieces of who she is, and sees through the noise of it. Like, even when they're talking in the beginning of the season and he's like, I confess my feelings and you smiled. Like, you like thinking of me this way. He sees all of these different pieces and he's so willing to just be there for her in whatever capacity makes sense. And that, to me, is this true love that he is displaying for her that I really just love. I love Minho. I'm not going to shut up about it. I think he's one of my favorite MMCs ever written, and I can't wait to watch their endgame unfold this season and how that will all work out. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Femme and Furious. If you like this episode, share, leave a review, all that good stuff. I will be back on Tuesday for chapters 11 through 20 of Binding 13. And then I will be back next Friday talking about A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. So if you watched that show, great. If you haven't, but you've been hearing about it, this Game of Thrones property, please go and watch it so you can tune into this conversation that I'll be having with Alexandra Stamson, who I just absolutely cannot wait to have this conversation with. That will be next Friday. And until then, have a blessed day.